Do you hear that? Wind howling down the chimney? It sounds like a whistle, doesn't it? Martha, you said you felt lonely in your room last night. My dear, let me tell you about loneliness. Real loneliness isn't an empty room. Real loneliness is being 20 miles from the nearest human being, with nothing but a wall of glass between you and the Atlantic Ocean. I haven't spoken of this night in decades because, frankly, I wasn't sure if I dreamt it. It was the winter of 1967. When I was 32, I took a job that no one else wanted, and on the third night, the ocean brought me a visitor. Is everyone settled? Good, Nurse Jenny. Please, no interruptions for the next hour, unless the building is on fire. Thank you. We spend our days here complaining about the noise, don't we? The television is too loud, the tea trolley squeaks, the visitors talk too fast. We crave silence. But I have learned the hard way that silence has a weight. It presses down on you. If it gets heavy enough, it can crush you. I want to take you back to a time when my hands were steady, my beard was thick and black, and I was running away from the world. It happened in November of 1967, when I was 32 years old. I was not a happy man at 32. I had just come out of a broken engagement. Her name was Clara, but that's a story for another time, and I felt that the city of Boston was suffocating me. The traffic, the noise, the pitying looks from friends. I needed to escape. I needed to go somewhere where the world couldn't find me. So, I answered an ad in the paper. Temporary keeper needed, Blackwater Ridge Lighthouse. Experience with mechanics preferred. Must be of sound mind. Sound mind. I should have paid more attention to that part. Blackwater Ridge wasn't a cozy lighthouse on a grassy hill. It was a fortress of stone built on a jagged tooth of rock, 3 miles off the coast of Maine. To get there, a supply boat had to navigate treacherous currents. Once they dropped you off, they didn't come back for 4 weeks. I remember the day I arrived. The sky was the color of a bruised plum purple and gray. The boat captain, a crusty old man named Captain Holloway, threw my duffel bag onto the wet concrete of the dock. He looked at me with one eye squinted against the salt spray. "You sure about this, son?" He yelled over the engine. "It gets loud out here. The ocean doesn't like being ignored." "I'll be fine," I shouted back. "I like the quiet." He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "There ain't no quiet at Blackwater. You'll see." And then he turned the boat around, leaving me standing there, a man of 32, alone on a rock in the middle of the freezing Atlantic. Mr. Samuel pauses to drink water, his eyes distant. The first week was hypnotic. The lighthouse was a machine, a beautiful, demanding machine. My life became a cycle of gears and oil. Every 4 hours, Primera Adito hand-cranked the weights that turned the massive Fresnel lens. That lens was a jewel, Martha, 12 feet high, made of hundreds of glass prisms. When the light hit it, it could cut through 20 miles of darkness. I spent my days polishing the brass. I spent my nights winding the clockwork mechanism and logging the weather. Wind, northeast, 15 knots. Visibility, good. Sea state, moderate. I felt peace. For the first time in years, the noise in my head stopped. But then came the third week. The barometer on the Wallen Old Brass instrument started to drop. It didn't just fall, it plummeted. The needle went past storm and hit the stopper at the bottom. I went out onto the gallery, the metal walkway around the top of the tower, 90 feet in the air. The air felt heavy, electric. The seagulls, usually so loud, were gone. They had fled inland. The ocean had changed color. It wasn't blue or gray anymore. It was black, and it was moving in a way I hadn't seen before. The waves weren't rolling. They were heaving, like the chest of a sleeping giant that was about to wake. That night, the storm hit. You have never heard noise until you have been inside a lighthouse during a nor'easter. It wasn't just wind. It was a physical assault. The waves were crashing so high they were hitting the glass of the lantern room, 90 feet up. Imaginez that major. You look out the window, expecting to see the sky, and instead, you see green water smashing against the glass. I was 32, in the prime of my life, strong as an ox, but I found myself sitting on the floor of the lantern room, clutching a wrench, praying that the stone would hold. Then the light went out. Not the lighthouse beam. The generator in the basement coughed and died. Total darkness. Now, a lighthouse keeper's first duty is the light. If the light is out, ships die. It's that simple. I grabbed my flashlight and a kerosene lantern. I had to go down the spiral staircase, 140 steps to the basement, to fix the generator. The staircase was cold. The stone walls were weeping with condensation. Drip, drip, drip. I reached the bottom. The basement was flooding. Seawater was spurting through a crack in the foundation. The water was freezing, up to my ankles. I waded over to the generator. I worked for an hour. My hands were numb. My knuckles were bleeding. I was cursing the day I was born. Finally, sputter. Cough. VROOOM. The generator roared back to life. The lights flickered on. I slumped against the wall, exhausted. I wiped the grease from my forehead. I just wanted to go back up, warm my hands, and sleep. But then I heard it. It was a dull, heavy sound. It came from the heavy iron door that led to the outside dock. I froze. The waves were smashing against the door. Yes, but this sound was different. It was irregular. Thump, ... Scratch, ... thump. I told myself, Samya, don't be a fool. It's a piece of driftwood. It's a seal. But the scratching ... it sounded like metal on metal. I walked toward the iron door. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I was 32, but I felt like a child of 5, afraid of the closet. I put my ear against the cold iron. I heard a voice. No boat could survive this storm. No swimmer could survive these waters. It was impossible. I grabbed the wheel of the door. It was rusted and heavy. I hauled on it with all my strength. Grrr clank. The latches opened. The wind tore the door out of my hands. It slammed against the wall with a crash that sounded like a gunshot. Rain and freezing spray blasted into the basement instantly, soaking me to the bone. I shone my lantern into the darkness of the night. And there, crawling up the concrete sleepy.doi ... was a hand. A human hand. Pale, white as bone, clutching the edge of the concrete. I rushed forward, fighting the wind. I grabbed the hand. It was cold. So cold. It burned. Primera. Pool. I am a strong man. Or I was. Back when I was 32, I braced my feet against the slippery stone and hauled. A body slid over the edge of the dock. A man. He was wearing a tattered life vest. Old-fashioned cork style. His clothes were his face, ... God. His face was gray. His eyes were rolled back in his head. I dragged him inside the basement and managed to force the iron door shut again. The silence returned, except for the roaring of the generator and the man's ragged breathing. HHHHEUUUH ... H HHHHUUUH ... I checked him for injuries. He had a nasty gash on his head. He was hypothermic. His eyes fluttered open. They were the bluest eyes I had ever seen. But they didn't look at me. They looked through me. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was like a vice. The bells, he whispered. What? I leaned closer. Don Quartz. Die ... Listen ... To the bells. And then he passed out. Mr. Samuel leans forward, whispering to the group. I carried him up the 140 steps. It took me nearly an hour. Dead weight. My back screamed in protest. I laid him on my cot in the kitchen area. I stripped off his wet clothes, wrapped him in wool blankets, and poured warm broth down his throat. I sat by his side all night, watching his chest rise and fall. I must have dozed off in the chair. I woke up because of a sound. I ran down the stairs. My heart in my throat. I ran all the way to the basement. The iron door was closed. Locked from the inside. I searched every inch of that tower. There is nowhere to hide in a lighthouse. Friends, it is a tube of stone. He was gone. When I went back to the kitchen to make coffee, trying to convince myself I had hallucinated the whole thing due to fumes or isolation, I saw something on the table. Where the man had been lying, there was a puddle of seawater. I picked it up. It was heavy, and etched into the brass was a date, 1912. Gasps from the residents. Albert drops his spoon. I radioed the mainland the next morning. I asked Captain Holloway if there were any ships missing. None, he said. Quiet night, aside from the wind. I asked him, Captain, was there ever a wreck out here? Years ago, there was a long silence on the radio. Samuel, the captain said, his voice dropping low. Why, do you ask? Just curious. I lied. Well, the captain said, back in 12, a cutter went down on the ridge. The HMS Kestrel. All hands lost. They say the captain rang the ship's bell until the water filled his lungs, trying to warn others away from the rocks. I looked at the brass button in my hand. I finished my shift. I stayed the full for weeks. I kept the light burning. I polished the brass, but I never slept soundly again. Every time the wind blew, I heard that bell. Clung, clung. When the supply boat came to pick me up, I threw that button into the sea. I wanted to leave it where it belonged. So, Major, you ask me why I don't mind the noise of this place. Why I don't mind the nurses checking on us every hour, because I know what true silence brings. When you are young, when you are 32, you think you want to be alone to find yourself. But sometimes, when you are truly alone, you find things that should have stayed lost. We are lucky to be here. Friends, we have warm beds. We have soup. And most importantly, we are not alone in the dark. He taps his cane on the floor. Now, Nurse Jenny, I believe I've earned an extra biscuit with my tea tonight. My throat is dry from all this talking. He winks, but his hand trembles slightly as he reaches for his tea. Good night.